Another aspect of, let's say, inequality is also about the voices of patients at conferences. When I spoke at a conference in 2011 in Dubai with all kinds of big telecom operators, they were convening with 600 people in this great hotel, talking about how mobile health 2011 was going to be a $1.7 trillion market next year. And I work at Radboud University Medical Center, where we think that we're very much forward, but I didn't thought that that would be the case, at least not in 1 year. So during that conference, I tried to find a physician in the audience or to find a patient in the audience. And up till lunch, the word patient wasn't even mentioned once. And also during lunch, I wasn't able to find any patient or physician. To be honest, there was one dentist in the audience who was kind enough to sit in my keynote session afterwards. But the thing is that we really should also make sure that the ones who it matters the most should have their voices also in conferences. And at Health 2.0 and also increasingly at HIMSS, it's very great to see that this really get the emphasis in terms of patients' includedness. I would love to welcome to the stage Maurice Ennis-O'Connor together with Fabian, who will take the patient address. Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. I'm just going to get this over. There we go.
Digital transformation starts not with engaging the technology, but with engaging the patient. 6 years ago, Leonard Kish said something that fired the imagination of the healthcare industry. If patient engagement, he said, were a drug, it would be the blockbuster drug of the century and malpractice not to use it. Since I first saw those words written, I've seen patient engagement become a leading theme at conferences like this. I've seen it appear on countless headlines, on white papers and surveys and industry reports. And each time I see those words, patient engagement, I'm reminded of Inigo Montoya in The Princess Bride. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. Because I see that patient engagement is used to describe everything, from social media strategies to patient experience questionnaires, from patient portals to tracking vitals with wearables. I've seen it described, and often interchangeably, as patient activation, involvement, participation, adherence, compliance, centricity, and empowerment. But what I haven't seen is any significant progress in turning the rhetoric of patient engagement into a tangible reality in the real world in which patients live. It seems to me that organizational approaches to involving patients hasn't moved much beyond tokenistic consultations. So Dan Monroe was right when he wrote in Forbes a year after Kish's statement that how we define and then implement patient engagement will determine whether it's truly a miracle drug or just another variant of age-old snake oil. Because it's all too easy to capture attention with a buzzword. But it's past time now for the real work of patient engagement to begin. And what better way to begin that work than here, right now, at the start of this conference? One of the first themes that jumped out of the page when I looked at the program is that of empowering patients and citizens to become CEOs of our own health. But I want to urge you not to see this as a standalone theme. I hope that I am going to see this theme embedded right throughout the conference. So if you're a speaker, I want you to take a moment. I want you to ask yourself, is the patient voice present in my talk? And if you're an exhibitor, how will I know that a patient was involved in the design of your technology when I visit your stand? And if you're a patient, I want you to observe how many times you really see yourself reflected over the next few days. You know, one of the things that I hear a lot when I go to conferences is the "we're all patients" statement. Well, if that's the case, then why am I here? And it's not that I doubt the sincerity of this statement. I know that many of us will have an experience of being ill, but in most cases, these are episodes of acute care. And in acute care, you get sick, you get treated, and hopefully you get well again. You quite simply stop being a patient. But when you're diagnosed with a chronic or progressive condition, you're a patient forever. It's as our friend Dave DeRoncard says, until you've actually had your life on the line, until you've had a diagnosis that stops you in your tracks, knowing your life will never be the same, until then, you don't know what it's like to be in need, to really need help and support and care. I know what it's like to be that patient in need of help and support and care. I know what it's like to be stopped in my tracks when I heard the words that changed my life forever. You've got cancer. And with those words, I embarked not only on a medical journey, but on a journey of patient advocacy, which has led me to stand here on this stage in front of you today as the opening keynote. And it all began with one simple action. And that was sharing my story online. Because I believe that story is an analog intervention in a digital world, but it's no less powerful for being so. When asked what she thought was the most exciting innovation in the connected health era, Susanna Fox, at the time Chief Technology Officer of the US Department of Health and Human Services, said, people talking to each other. Now, that might seem like a surprisingly analog answer from a CTO, but in fact, Susanna is right. The simple act of people talking with each other, of sharing our stories with each other, can have profound and far-reaching effects. Regina Holiday, and I see that Indu also mentioned her in our talk, she started a movement by the simple act of sharing her story. Now, Regina will be known to many of you, but for those who haven't heard her story, she's an artist who uses her paintbrush as a tool for patient advocacy. And her story is, in March 2009, her husband Fred was diagnosed with metastatic kidney cancer. And during his hospitalization, Regina asked to see her husband's medical records. She was told that copies of his records would cost 73 cents per page and would be available only after a 21-day wait. So in her own words, my husband is dying in your hospital, and you're telling me that I have to wait 21 days for his medical notes? Everything's on the computer. All you have to do is print it out, but you're going to make me wait 21 days. And they said, yeah, that's just the way it is. Fred died 3 months later, in June 2009. He was only 39 years of age. And Regina believes if her husband had better access to his medical records, he would have gotten better care. And it's the story she tells in this painting. And if you look closely, you'll see there's a clock, but it has no hands, because time stands still for us when we're in a medical emergency. And you can see there's a nurse looking at a computer with a dark screen, because records aren't shared with patients. And in his hands, you'll see Fred is clutching a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper are the last words he said, "Go get them, Regina." And so she did, using her artwork to become part of the healthcare debate. She's earned a platform to push for legislation that will provide better access to medical records. And she's continued her advocacy work through art. She's also started the Walking Gallery, as Indu mentioned. And it's a movement in which she paints many different stories on wearers' jackets. And perhaps we have some Walking Gallery members here with us at this conference, and I hope we do, because I love the Walking Gallery. It's a living, breathing testament to the power of stories. It's an analog intervention in a digital world. So what Regina and the Walking Gallery and a host of other patients are today is not what you might expect the typical patient to be, particularly if we realize that the word patient comes from a Latin word which means to suffer or to bear. It suggests someone who passively bears anything that's done to them. Well, that word does not represent the many patients I know who are active, engaged, and informed participants in our care, who are more than the patient label, more than the patient's story. And equally, just as I do not and I could not represent the experiences of all cancer patients, those who make sweeping statements about what patients need or what patients want cannot possibly be speaking on behalf of all patients. You cannot lump us all together as if we're just one homogeneous group. There's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all patient. So getting to know us as individuals starts with listening to our story. But it shouldn't end with our story. Our story is just the beginning of our journey together. Today, on this stage, Fabian and I, we want to tell a different story. We no longer want to be the token patient story who makes your conference more inclusive or makes your patient app more patient-friendly. We want you to take our stories and we want you to do something with it. To be partners in designing healthcare that not only works, but makes a real difference in our lives. Co-design goes beyond inviting patients to join you at the table. It's about asking patients to help design the table with you, because patients have the expertise that you need to build a better table. So as developers, you are experts in technology. As clinicians, you are experts in a disease, but as patients, we are the experts in what it takes to live with the disease on a daily basis and which technology will help us to live our lives better. Designing solutions without patients is, as David Gilbert pointed out to me on Twitter this week, it's like expecting a women-centered organization run by men to set up a focus group to imagine what being a woman is like. And yet, I still hear as many reasons for not involving patients in co-design as I do reasons for doing so. And the point I think that's missing here, and it's an important point, it's not that patient-centered design is about companies asking patients to tell them what they should build. Patients actually shouldn't be telling companies what to build in the same way that companies shouldn't be telling patients what their problem is. To paraphrase Rob Fitzpatrick, we own the problem, you own the solution. Without patient involvement in design, it's too easy to jump to assumptions about what patients need. Tiffany Christensen is a cystic fibrosis patient, and she's also vice president for experience innovation at the Beryl Institute, and she describes co-design as opening up your minds by asking patients to tell you what's the most meaningful outcome for them. So it's about changing the conversation from what's the matter with you to what's the matter to you, what matters to you. And in order to foster a richer understanding of the human experience of illness, we need to start seeing beyond the patient label. And if you peel back that label, you'll find that a patient isn't a disease with a body attached, but a life into which a disease has intruded. Technology, for technology's sake, misses the point. It misses the point of e-health, as Lord Victor Adebowale says. E-health should be a tool for engagement, relationships, and connectivity, not a substitute for it. In a time of rapid digital transformation, which is what we're in now, I think it's more important than ever that we provide personalized, human-centered design. To enter into another human's experience requires us to find a point of entry. And I believe that story is that point of entry. Our stories help build relationships of trust and understanding. So I hope that you will listen for these stories over the next 3 days. Each of us, whether we're a patient or a carer, a developer, a healthcare provider, we all have a story to tell and we all have solutions to propose. But we need to be willing to sit down and to engage in a dialogue together, to take these stories to the next level. So I said at the beginning that it's way past time to engage patients meaningfully in digital transformation. However, I do like the Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. This right now is the critical juncture where we're deciding, are we going to create an IT infrastructure that is truly centered on the patient, Or are we just going to continue to engage in rhetoric and empty promises? So I say, let's waste no more time in planting that tree of meaningful engagement. I invite you to imagine a world where we work together to create a landscape where people feel empowered to live their lives to the fullest. A world in which we no longer do things to or for the patients, but with patients. A world in which partnership is not only possible, it's essential if we're to unlock the full potential of digital transformation. The most powerful force in health innovation is yet to be fully unleashed. If we're to accelerate health IT's potential to enact positive change, we can only cry havoc and unleash the dogs of partnership when we work together alongside each other. So I'm asking you to join us. How will you show us your commitment to moving patient engagement beyond rhetoric and into reality? I'm asking you to show us that commitment not in words, but in your action. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marie.